what I wanted to share with the Senate is how I come to the table on the question of the climate change bill. We clearly understand that something is happening to the earth. The earth is heating up. And obviously there are interests that are going to be affected, special interest, if we go about changing the way that we are doing business, the kind of pollutants that we are putting in the air. And those business interests will claim that, in fact, they're being harmed. And I understand that. That's part of the body politic that we've got to come together and find a solution that will be the least detrimental to folks as we are trying to change the government policy of all of this stuff that we are putting in the air. And indeed, Mr. President, we have been putting this in the air ever since we started changing our society in the Industrial Revolution, because the burning of fossil fuels is starting to accumulate carbon in the air. And that carbon is acting as a shield in the upper atmosphere, creating the greenhouse effect, that when the sun's rays come in and hit the earth and they reflect off, normally they would radiate out into space. But the fact that we are creating a cap like a greenhouse with these gases, primarily carbon dioxide, that they are trapping that heat. And as a result, the earth is heating up. Now, in the course of this debate, we'll have a lot more scientific evidence that'll come forth and tell us just how many parts per million of carbon in the air that you can get before it becomes almost irreversible. And we certainly want to avoid that. But that means that we have to come back to the political policy and make the decisions that will prevent us from ever getting to that concentration of carbon in the atmosphere that becomes the point of no return. That at that point that the earth continues to heat up to the point that it has all of the consequences. The consequences of the ice sheet in Greenland that I have been on, melting. And that in itself, it's 2 miles thick. It's fresh water. It's fresh water because of the hundreds of thousands of years of the rain coming and the rain turning into snow and the snow packing, and year after year the same thing happening. It's 2 miles thick in the center of Greenland. And it's all fresh water. And if that melts, the seas are going to rise in somewhere between 10 and 15 feet. The entire seas of planet Earth are going to rise. What happens to Antarctica and the ice caps there in the heating? And we'll have testimony and we'll have scientific evidence and all of this. We can't let that happen. And so we're going to have to make the policy changes. That is, we're going to have the political will in order to make the policy changes. And the tough thing about this is, it's not just this country. We got to get the rest of the countries to do it. But America is the one who has to lead. And in the last decade, America has not led. Now, let me just show you. This is my state. What would happen if the seas rise? If they rise 10 feet, which is the red, here's the state of Florida. You're familiar with it, the peninsula of Florida, the Florida Keys. If it rose 10 to 20 feet, Florida is going to look like this, just the gray. All of this red and blue is going to be underwater. Folks, senators, that's where most of the population of Florida is, along the coast. I don't want that to happen to my state, and my state has more coastline than any other state in the continental U.S. Only Alaska has more coastline than our state. That's in excess of 1,500 miles of coastline. And that's where the population lives in Florida. I don't want that to happen to our state. Now, in the closing minutes that I have, and Mr. President, would you tell me how many minutes I have before? Mr. President, I just want to share with the Senate what I saw from the window of a spacecraft. It is very typical that space flyers on the first day in space will be looking for things. On the 24th flight of the space shuttle over 2 decades ago, I was at that window when you can get time, and you don't have much time because every minute is planned. I was looking for things. I was looking for the Cape where we were launched. By the second day in space, your perspective has broadened and you're looking at continents. And by the third day in space, you are looking back at home. And home is the planet. It is so beautiful, it is so colorful, it is such an alive creation suspended in the middle of nothing, and space is nothing. It is an airless vacuum that goes on for millions of light years, and there's home. And it's so beautiful, and yet when you look at it, it is so fragile. You look at the rim of the earth, there's a bright blue color right at the rim that fades off into the blackness of outer space, and right at the rim of the earth you can see the thin little film that sustains all of life, the atmosphere. And even from that altitude, with the naked eye, you can see how we're messing it up. You could see coming across Brazil, in the Amazon, upper Amazon region, the color contrast would show you where they're destroying the rainforest. And I came away from that profound experience of seeing home from a different perspective with a new feeling that I needed to be a better steward of what God has given us, our home, the planet. And if we continue to abuse the planet, Mother Nature will not work
The senator's time is
in syncopation and in balance. And for that reason, I am supporting this Lieberman-Warner bill. Thank you, Mr. President.